Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Kerbal Space Program in the Interplanetary Chase. You joined us back in the vehicle assembly building while we finished construction of this absolute gargantuan rear section of the Kerbal orbital lab, which of course we are about to attempt to send up and of course dock to the back of the lab, since we've obviously got rid of that absolutely massive unnecessary kind of fuel tank bit. This thing, its orbital manoeuvring stage, or rocket even, is quite literally just one nuclear engine which we're about to put to the test here, and obviously we've timed our launch perfectly, or at least I'd like to think we have, as we are once again accelerating our footage here because we've been to orbit lots of times before. It's nothing really new, and my goal here was to attempt to launch it as the lab was passing over us. As it would seem, we have actually launched a little bit late, as we would reach our theoretical apoapsis once the lab had already passed us. However, that's nothing we can't account for. As you can see, we are trying to match velocities now, but we're not having much luck. We do manage to do it. Our orbit isn't quite perfect, so of course we're going to get rid of our ascent stage and use our nuclear stage to, of course, close up to the target, or better yet, kill our relative velocity, as it looks like we timed that a little bit late. This nuclear engine, it's the smaller one, you see, so of course it's nowhere near as powerful as the ones on board the station, and what we're doing is we're literally just attempting to dock this thing, firstly to provide the station a little bit more fuel for its trip, and secondly to provide it with a little bit more oomph, emphasis on a little bit, because of course once again we do only have a tiny little nuclear engine compared to, of course, the big one. Something else worth mentioning is that this thing does have a landing cupola, and we did that to include some more struts and possibly add an extra Kerbal. Of course, there were no Kerbals on board. It's remote control at the moment, and speaking of struts and Kerbals, we are currently unable to dock because of the struts that were left there from a previous vessel. Of course, they're getting in the way. They're colliding with the front of this vessel, which means that obviously now we've got rid of them, we should be able to dock up, and there we go, docked with no particular problems. Now, of course, we extend the solar panels on that thing. Head towards the light side of Kerbin, of course, just to admire our work so far. And all of our little space frogs are looking rather quite happy. Speaking of being happy, I would like to take a moment just to thank all of you guys for helping me reach the mile, I can't English, of of 500 subscribers. You know what, this is more like a hobby thing for me. I didn't think I'd make it this far, but it's amazing knowing that obviously there are that many of you who enjoy watching this, and I love making these videos for you guys as well. So, you know, once again, thank you very much. Anyway, little bit off topic as we crack on. Of course, we have strutted up the landers, and of course we need to do a few final checks. We need to balance out the fuel from the rear tank, although I don't think we're going to do that just yet. Reason being is because there are no fuel ducts or fuel lines that we can use, which means of course it can't share fuel between the other engines, so that might be a little bit problematic as we just finish up strutting the bottom lander there as well. So that is wonderful. As we, of course, get everything ready to go, get a nice little screenshot. And of course, we are now ready to show you guys where we intend on transferring to. For this, I very briefly installed the transfer window planner mods. As you can see, we are attempting to go to Juna. As we plot our transfer window, we should see a graph come up. And you can see that as it stands, we are actually very, very close to our Juna transfer window. I actually intended on kind of timing this around this point, so I think I've done quite a good job. About 200 and something days into our space program, if I remember correctly, is when the first transfer window to Juna is. So of course, I'm going to set that as a target. extend and maneuver curve in prograde, and as you can see, we are very close to a encounter, which we have now achieved through the maneuver planner. I believe Matt Lown actually mentioned this recently. The maneuver planner is good at plotting maneuvers, but of course it's quite unpredictable, which means 90% of the time, if you're trying to achieve something as precise as an encounter from another planet, odds are you're not going to get one despite you getting one in the planned maneuver. So we're going to go ahead and do this anyway. Reason being is because seeing as we had close encounters kind of in the first place, when it's nothing we can't really account for, and perhaps do kind of mid-solar orbit course correction. So of course we'll see what happens. I must apologise about the long burn time. Once again, this is what happens when we use nuclear engines. They are incredibly efficient, but do not have much oomph. However, of course, we will complete this manoeuvre eventually, and even then, this is with accelerated footage, and for whatever reason, the RCS thrusters around the back of the vessel there seem to be overheating. That might be to do with the fact that they're so close to the other two massive nuclear engines on the VPUs. However, I don't think that will be of too much concern, given, of course, how many RCS thrusters we have on this vessel, generally speaking, of course, because it was built in Kerbal orbit, and in order to dock something in orbit, you need RCS thrusters, so it's safe to say we have more than what's required in terms of monopropellant manoeuvring, so I think we're safe. As you can see, we've got a moon encounter pushing us out now. And we have a Kerbal ejection. Wonderful. So, what we need to do now is just finish this burn, of course. See if it does happen to put us on course for a Juna encounter. So we have 100 meters per second of delta V left to burn. And it actually looks like burning in the same direction that manoeuvre was wanting us to would actually cost us more delta V. And of course, we would miss out on an encounter. The separation between our two close encounters there were actually increasing, so we actually burnt too much, which means annoyingly we will have to do a mid-course correction. However, it's a relatively simple manoeuvre that will only cost us, what, 125 delta V. No manoeuvre required for this, as you can see we're bringing that separation down, and we have achieved a periapsis, which means we have an encounter. So we do a crew report, EVA report, keep those, and obviously we can transmit those, because we don't lose anything transmitting those rather than collecting them through a recovered vessel. Going to warp a bit closer to our Juna encounter, and look at all of these available experiments. I mean, first things first, we do need to circularize in order to make sure that we don't get, thrown out of Juna's orbit again. This one takes almost 2,000 delta V, so we're going to be pushing it quite fine when it comes to fuel. However, of course, assuming we can circularize, then this should be okay. As we go ahead and do all of these experiments, we transmit what we can, once again, for those experiments of which we're not going to lose anything by doing so. And obviously, in hindsight, I've noticed that we are doing this in a little bit of a silly way. If you guys can see what I've done wrong, obviously let me know in the comments section. I will tell you once we kind of get a little bit closer. But for now, once again, we are just trying to circularize, because when Matt's done, we have all the time in the world, or Juna better yet, to obviously do orbital corrections and end up to where we need to be. Almost halfway through our burn now, and as you can see, our orbital speeds seems to be decreasing along the same lines of our manoeuvre, and of course I suppose that would happen considering we're so high up. So of course our orbital speeds won't necessarily have to be very high. 750 meters per second left on the manoeuvre there. We're carrying a lot of oxidizer for what we need to do, although of course that is for the sake of the landers, which use rocket engines. .500 meters per second remaining. As you can see, we are starting to get some of those patched conics flickering up. And you can see that our ejection or our escape trajectory is starting to curve, which is good. And any moment now we should get a capture. There we go, we are now in orbit around the Juno system. So of course what we can do now is we can set Ike as our targets, which will allow us to have a look at where our ascending and descending nodes are through our current orbit, and hopefully get a nice little inclination change, because of course we want to go equatorial on Juno. Once again, you are about to see the mistake I make when it comes to getting this orbit complete. However, I thought I was doing nothing wrong at first. There we go. And of course we need to bring our periapsis down to about 100 kilometers, more or less the same altitude we were above Kerbin. So once again, we've planned that manoeuvre, just time warp towards it. Our signal strength is starting to decrease, of course, so something we may need to think about doing if and when we manage to get this thing back to Kerbin in one piece and collect our data is get some more powerful antennas so we can extend our communications network. Periapsis is 98 kilometers, so I think we're just going to point prograde and use the RCS to bring that up to where it needs to be, which is done. Lovely. And of course, from now, we just coast down to our periapsis and, of course, start burning prograde to bring the apoapsis down. And once again, we have plenty of science, and my mistake here should be very, very obvious now. I seem to have accidentally put ourselves into a retrograde orbit, which means that our orbital direction is actually going against the planetary rotation of Juno. So that might be a problem when it comes to, of course, sending down a lander, because of course we'll need to spend that little bit more delta V in terms of, you know, going against the planetary rotation, yet alone actually, you know, matching orbits with the station and of course docking back up with it, which is the plan. I do hope to return these experiments rather than transmit those from the surface and in the atmosphere. We are having to do this in 2 passes because, once again, nuclear engines, we can only burn so much before we've passed too far beyond our periapsis and ultimately end up ruining our orbit. So here we go. 100 kilometer by 99 kilometer orbit around Juno. That's, I think, pretty much the best we're going to get. We have so many experiments to do, and I'm absolutely loving this. Once again, pointing progrades here. Can transmit that one, although what we would do, although we seem to have lost connection, so once again we need to improve our comms network, because we get a lovely little view and a couple of screenshots of our station in orbit around Juno. Being honest with you guys, I'm amazed that this has actually worked as well as it has done, because of course this was a very ambitious project, not only in this series but throughout the 12 or 13 years I've been playing this game. This was actually my most ambitious ever mission, of course. Getting a mothership to Juno and the Juno system, and of course sending down some landers to collect and return that data. So speaking of collecting data, as you can see, we're collecting all of our experiments and you can just see how much we have. So it's going to be an absolute nightmare to return this to Kerbin. So we'll see what we can do. Now I think it's high time we send one of these landers down to Juno surface, and in order to do that, I think first things first, of course, we need to unstrut one of the landers in order to, I suppose, be able to set it loose. And of course, we get a Kerbal back inside, and we need to select a pilot to obviously pilot said lander before we undock it and send it down to the surface. And I think Munrik, he's already been on the moon. He's had his kind of original spacewalks. So I think, let's have a look to see who we have. Maybe Kerbal McKerbal-face? I think he needs some experience, because of course he's not the most decorated Kerbal as it stands. So I think we'll offer him the opportunity. As, we're just trying to find the lander that has no struts attached, as obviously that's one that's ready to go. As, of kind of mess with the camera a little bit, but all is well. We've got to be careful not to bump into the solar panels here. And I think we found it, so of course, if you would grab and board this lander, Mr. Kerbal Face, that will be lovely. Okay. And of course, all we need to do now is undock. Here he is in his little lander. We're going to retract the solar panels because, of course, Juno does have an atmosphere, albeit a very thin one. However, it is enough to break antennas. That's also why we've bought so many parachutes, because, of course, they will help us slow down. They won't help us down to the surface too much. We'll need to suicide burn our vertical speed for that. But, of course, the parachutes will very much assist in terms of saving fuel and pointing the nose to where it needs to be. So, of course, we have brought our periapsis down enough for us to, as it stands, crash down. Obviously, we will fix that at some point as we do some more experiments entering Juno's atmosphere. And look at all of these experiments. We have plenty more to go. We retract our antenna there because, once again, that is one that can break. Atmosphere analysis, worth 100 science points. Yes, please. Activating our engines. Maybe not yet. As you can see, the parachutes are armed, so it's just a matter of time. I was thinking of doing an atmosphere analysis, but of course we only have 2 of those on board, and where Mr. Kerbal is not a scientist, he won't be able to reset them, so I ultimately think if we can do this from the surface, it might be worth a little bit more data. As our first drone shoots deploy, as we increase that altitude, because once again we are moving very, very quickly. As we arm our main parachutes now, I think we should probably do those as well, as we assist with a little suicide burn. It's a little bit of a hilly kind of area, so of course we need to be careful. And we kill our forward speeds here, and prepare to touch down. We do begin to tip a little bit. I'm hoping the landing legs will catch us there. As you can see, they certainly do. We are still burning a little bit, which I don't notice at the time, but of course we will stop that. I was wondering why we were sliding, so there we go. We are down on the surface of Juno. Lovely. I don't think we'd make it this far. So, time to do some experiments, I think. We open our science bay that we've built. We deploy all. And of course, mystery goo observation, EVA report, 64 science, very nice. Surface sample worth 240. This is why I want to keep that rather than transmit it. We should probably think about extruding our ladders to get us down onto the planetary surface. Although, just by luck, of course, with ladders, we can't seem to climb over the original mounting point, which means we don't have any way of actually getting down onto it. But no matter, I'm sure, seeing as Juno's gravity is so minimal in terms of, well, relative to Kerbal at least, then we might be able to, of course, fly down. Plant our flag, not remove helmet, because obviously we want our Kerbals to return, you know, alive. And, ladies and gents, we have our Juno touchdown site, and we got plenty of science on the way. Lovely stuff. Of course, Science Alert is telling us we can do an EVA surface, not EVA surface experiment, sorry, but an EVA science experiment, but I'm not quite sure what that entails, nor what it does, because of course I tried to do it, it does nothing. There is a little crew report we're able to do, flying, although that only seems to happen when we're using the jetpack. So we can't get back on board just yet. Of course, we would like to get that crew reports and the kind of additional science that comes with it. So we press a button, doesn't seem to do much. Maybe it's a bug, I am not entirely sure. Regardless, we're going to fly ourselves back up here and attempt to grab the correct ladder. Back on board the lander we go here. Wonderful. And it's about time we consider getting back up to the station. So, of course, once again, it is in a retrograde orbit, so the planet is moving towards the station and vice versa. We will need to launch a little bit earlier than we'd expect, owing to the quicker relative velocity. Before we do, of course, we need to repack our parachutes, just in case we need to use these vessels to get back down to Kerbin. Assuming, once again, we make it that far. So, we can close our service bay. I forgot to retract the ladders, but that's not a problem. Activate the engines. And we are ready to go. So once again, flying up. Atmosphere analysis. Crew report, we can transmit that. Oh, well, once again, we could do if we had any signal back to the KSC. It would help if we would extend our antenna, wouldn't it? We're actually going the wrong way at the moment, so we need to correct that. Wonderful, and of course we're just waiting for our apoapsis to reach the 100 kilometer mark, which it has done, and we have a close encounter with the station, which is good. So of course from there we can just circularize and I suppose do some orbital maneuvers to match velocities and dock back up, hopefully. Might be a bit of an ask, given that we have just over 700 meters per second worth of delta V, and of course that's without us circularizing, so this is a bit of an ambitious maneuver, but I am confident that we'll be able to make it work. As you can see, bringing our apoapsis up now, we are now in orbit. Currently 100 by 85 kilometer orbit, which isn't ideal. As we extrude our solar panels once again. I think we're going to have a look to see what happens here, because of course we could either catch the station with our lower periapsis, or we might be able to extrude our periapsis a little bit and allow the station to catch up to us. I'm just trying to think of how we can do this in the most fuel efficient way, because once again, of course, we are only down to 118 meters per second of delta V now, so this is cutting it very, very close. I think we're on thin ice here, although we do have a nice chunk, of course, of monopropellant. And having a look, this particular monoprop push is giving us a lovely close intercept, which we will graciously accept. As you can see, that map was not lying. We're only 4 kilometers away from the station now, so we're going to give it a little puff of rocket engine here just to see if we can close up. And it's within render distance now at 2 kilometers. Relative speed to the station is only 23.5 meters per second. Wonderful stuff. As we need to consider pointing target retrogrades in order to kill our relative velocity. And here we go. Once again, might just give it another little puff. And then last but not least, one more target retrograde, I think, just to match speeds. And then we can adjust our heading, of course, and enter docking mode. So we try to firstly match our planes properly. And we have completely matched velocities now, which is always nice. We might need to change our yaw a little bit, because it looks like we're slightly off centre in comparison to the docking port. But we've got the hardest part done. And there we go. Just lining up and docking up now. Lever magnets do the work. And we have docked. And we made it back to the station with no less than 22 meters per second worth of delta V. So I must say, I'm very proud of this, as we get Bill out once again to re-strut the lander. Now we've managed to get it back. So we go into the building mode here, we grab strut from Bill's inventory here, put it in front of the RCS port on the rear section, and of course, put it just above the flag on the lander. Wonderful stuff. So that's your work done, Bill. You can get back on board now, if you're so inclined. I'm aware that you like space, being a space frog and all that, but still. If you would be so kind as to grab the ladder there, Bill, we can then transfer you to your living quarters. Here we go. So there's the transfer crew button down there, which I'm trying to look for. For some reason, Bill still has a strut. I don't know if that's a bug, possibly, but even then, it's all good. Now, what we're doing now is we did actually return Bill to where he needs to go. look at our fuel. We're a little bit low, and I'm not confident that we can make it back to Kerbin given our current fuel load. So of course what I'm trying to do is we're actually going to push our orbit out to a Ike orbit. And of course we're going to circularise around Ike. The goal here is to actually park ourselves in an Ike orbit where the gravity is lower than that of Juno, to possibly open up the chance for a refuelling mission, which shouldn't be too difficult if we stay in Ike's orbit, of course. So we're getting ready to circularise, pointing retrogrades from our periapsis, curving in our escape trajectory, which should eventually end up with a circularisation. Transferring some fuel out of the big tank at the back there. That little nuclear engine is out of fuel now as we go ahead and perform some experiments from above Ike. As we remove the struts from another one of the landers there, because I think it might be worth possibly sending this lander down to Ike and getting some science from Juno's moon, which will be interesting. As once again, this is a mothership after all, and we have 2 landers, so we absolutely might as well. As we do decide to actually ditch that backstage. Reason being is because it ran out of fuel. There's no way we can get fuel in it. The engine's very, very small, and if anything, it's just added weight, which we don't really need anymore. So we're just trying to correct our periapsis, which is a little bit too low, and we are now in a lovely little 50 by 50 orbit. And we're just obviously pointing prograde now, get a nice little screenshot, and it's about time we spend some science. So we're looking at either very heavy rocketry or large volume containments for those really nice and chunky fuel tanks. Once again, it's all good getting big engines, but if we don't have the fuel tanks to make it work, there's no point. And of course, we already have the big engine plates, which means we don't necessarily need the big engines yet. So I think we'll go for the large volume containment. On the note of that, we are coming up to the end of today's episode. So thank you guys very much for watching. Please like and subscribe for more, and I'll see you all in the next one.